Hello, my name is Sabapathy Narayanan, and today we are in conversation with Goutham, who is the Sales Director of Payhuddle Solutions. And you're going to talk to him about how Payhuddle is serving their customers during this pandemic. Banks typically depend on transactions. Okay, so and this pandemic has thrown open the digital payment space, and the number of people who are actually getting into digital payments have really increased. But are banks geared up to tap this opportunity? Do they have the acceptance infrastructure for them to exploit this opportunity? This is something that we're going to discuss in detail with Goutham of Payhuddle Solutions. And what typically happens with banks is before they can implement the acceptance infrastructure in the market, they'll have to get them certified by the payment brands, the respective payment brands, be it MasterCard, Visa, or RuPay, or any of those brands. So now, this requires certain level of consulting as well as the certification services. And Payhuddle is in the business of providing consulting services that allows these banks to get these certifications. So now, Goutham, can you just take me through as to the kind of consulting services that which you provide banks?
Certainly, Siva. So we help acquiring bank in terms of getting their terminals roll out to the market. Basically, you can consider when I say terminal, be it their POS, soft POS, mobile POS, ATMs. So any of the form factor, it doesn't matter. So we help them in migrating it to, for example, MagSwipe to chip or chip to contactless or dual interface migration. So we handhold them from initiating the projects with the payment scheme till the LOA is received to the customer. So there are a lot of steps involved and a lot of stakeholders involved during this. We make sure we be the part of acquiring bank, as if, see, for example, there are many stakeholders will be involved during the certification process, be it terminal vendors, be it their host vendors. So we interact with all of them as an acquiring bank. So we make sure acquirers, basically they can focus on their main core works, and rest everything regarding the terminal certification is handled by Payhuddle. So that they don't need to really spend on this on the certification process, so they can focus on their main core areas, and we can help them in terms of getting the certification done. So in a nutshell, yes, this is what we help them with throughout the process.
All right. So how is your consulting business going with this pandemic and with all the travel restrictions and people unwilling to travel? So how do you really provide this consulting services for your customers?
It's actually a good question. Initially in probably February, March, I was a bit skeptical of how would this situation go and stuff like that. But one thing which actually helped me is how, as a company, see, for example, if you notice, most of the software companies, they are not so well used to working from home. Except, yes, there are a few software companies that have adopted it. So in this payment domain, being everything on the hardware and lab and everything is involved, a lot of things we were not sure how this works. So I was very actually surprised to see how our own company, the way within 1.5-2 days, the whole infrastructure is moved. So this actually also triggered an idea in terms of saying why not even offer something in everything is remote. See, as a concept, remote consulting was always there. Okay, so there is something new. We figured it out. But more or less, when somebody says remote support, is basically take the logs, support them over emails. Basically, you will give a few hours of time to customers saying, okay, I have like 2 hours, 3 hours of my time. I'll give it to you in terms of validating your logs and stuff like that. But when we figured it out, there is something like remote consulting. Instead of physically we being there, we can make sure our presence is there, be it over phone or taking remote access and doing testing. With the test tool, our test tool, how we're going to use it, all that. We made a plan. And in fact, we spoke to a lot of acquirers during this period, especially in the month of April and May. We started approaching them, explaining them how this whole thing works. So in fact, it was my surprise. It actually came out really well. This concept, I mean, basically that thing was there in all the acquirers saying how this would work and stuff like that. But yeah, this in fact helping us in terms of consulting. Now, I think this may be a way forward. There might be a lot of reduction in terms of cost to banks as well, in terms of travel, stay, and having somebody traveling from other countries. Considering now the situation, I really don't know, probably for next 1 year, this whole lockdown may go, or we may not be that freely traveling like previously. So considering all that, I certainly believe remote consulting or anything offsite, remotely doing will be the way forward.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. So now suppose a bank signs up with you. So can you just take me through the process as to what kind of tools do you use and how does your consultant engage with the bank and how does this entire process work?
Sure, Sabha. See, generally what happens is I'll probably give you an overview of what certification and how this process works. Then I'll bring the consulting part to it. See, generally a bank will have multiple options to complete the certification process. Okay, whether do it by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in that way there are advantages and challenges. Challenges in the sense they have to learn and they have to keep them updated with the latest rule sets given by each payment scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then comes the using the qualified test tools. Okay, qualified, when we talk about qualified test tools, we are also qualified test tool vendors, but however, when it comes to consulting business, a bank buying tools to the certification, it is not only one-time job. Okay, bank doesn't, I mean, it is not only a capital for bank. There is a lot of operation costs involved. Unless you have so many terminals which will be certified in India, it makes banks sense to buy a tool. Otherwise, it's always better to have a consultant who does it at a far better cost, and also they don't need to maintain anything.
Mm-hmm.
The third is either they can hire a consultant and do get it from on-site. These were the regular practices all the acquirers used to have it. So now considering the situation, I really don't think the last option would fly. So what we adopted, and this is what we are now working with banks we are doing. So what we do is, if bank doesn't have the test tools, what we do is we ship the test tool to bank as a part of this engagement. Okay, so here there is no lot of shipments involved. It's hardly a few cards and dongles is what we ship, and everything is controlled over software. So what we do is we ship these cards to banks. I mean, the situation is only commercial flights are not flying between the countries, but the shipments are happening.
Okay.
So this is not stopping us, or there is no challenge in terms of sending the tools on a returnable basis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then what we do is we engage customer from the initial time itself. Initial time, when I say, it is engaging with the payment scheme. Basically, they have to register, they have to start registering the project with the payment scheme, or initiating the project with the payment scheme. So what we do is we handhold from that period itself.
Mm-hmm.
So we make sure they're talking to the payment scheme to us, or if they're talking, we help them, assist them what to do, what not to do, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then comes, I mean, probably filling up the test cases and finding out what test case will be applicable for each schemes. Then the validating of the certificates, all that. So we make sure everything is taken care during this process. See, there might be a lot of challenges customers would expect in terms of how this remote works and whether we'll be able to do it. See, now if you see the new normal, the famous thing, what people use it is about video conference. So I'm very sure most of the banks are already used to it. So what we are trying now is making sure we are there supporting through video, not only through audios.
Mm-hmm.
So I can even probably, if they're not sure about what is happening, I can even show it to them how this works and ask them to do it. So I would need only one resource from bank side, not more than that.
Mm-hmm.
That is also on demand. Okay, it is not something all the time I would need that resource. Only when there is an issue to fix it, or when there is an issue that I have to escalate it, I would need one resource. Otherwise, a regular bank resource who can just put a card to me and help me in transaction, that is fine for me to go ahead with. Then once we have all this, we collect the logs we ourselves collect the logs. We make sure all the logs are validated, and we make sure we submit ourselves to the respective payment scheme for the certification. So in this whole scenario, if you see, we are there in every step. It is not like a remote support. It is actually a consulting where we are there throughout the steps. Only thing is, instead of physically being there, we are there throughout the stages remotely. And till they get the LOA, it is our responsibility. This is how we help them.
Yeah.
So initially, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, initially, even many of our acquirers had this thing like how this would work, because all of them are used to having an on-site resource.
Mm-hmm.
So this was very, very curious for them also. Really, it will work. So first 2-3 projects when we tried, it was a learning curve for us also, because there are a lot of challenges. We need to explain them how it works. But after second or third project, now I can say confidently that we have very well equipped to handle any kind of situation and any kind of challenges what we can see, what we can face remotely. And while explaining to customers, now I can talk to those. Talk about those challenges and how we address it. So more or less, it is convincing all the customers like, okay, this is the way forward.
Right. So that brings to an interesting point in our discussion. So you were speaking about reduction in cost for the customers, right? So does it also reduce the amount of time that it takes for them to get the certification with remote consulting, or does it
Uh,
increase the amount of time? So.
Partially, no, it doesn't, certainly doesn't increase the time.
Mhm,
Only thing is, it will save the time,
mhm.
because remote consulting, see, we are offering remote consulting for different regions.
Okay.
So it is geographically different. For
Uh-huh.
example, if I'm sending a resource,
Mhm.
okay, he will work particularly their time. But remote
All right.
consulting in the sense, for example, consider I'm working with an American client,
Mhm.
where I also supporting him the night.
Okay.
I mean, we are adjusting to their time.
Mhm, mhm,
So basically, our resource is working during their time. And for example, next day morning, when I have the time where my other resource can work on the validation of the logs.
mhm,
So certainly, I am expediting the time for the rollout of their product. At the same time, we are helping there during their time period. Because generally, when you say remote support,
uh-huh.
it is basically you do all the testing, you collect the logs, you dump the logs to me over email. I will validate. I take my own time,
Mhm.
and because of the time difference, it may take 1 or 2 days extra.
Okay.
Whereas in remote consulting, what we bring in is basically we adopt to your time zone
All right.
and make sure this goes in a flow.
Okay. So there is reduction in time also.
Certainly, a lot of reduction in that.
Okay, all right. So coming back to the original discussion that which we were having. So, for instance, if there is no remote consulting, what would your customers do at this point in time for their certification?
Okay, I don't know what others would be doing. I'll tell you one incident where it happened.
Mhm.
This very good customer of mine, where they had an Android POS, basically
Okay.
that they wanted to roll out. And basically now, if you see, the world is moving towards having everything contactless, tap and go, those kind of things.
Mhm.
So they wanted to roll out the contactless terminals to their market.
Mhm.
Okay, because of this whole situation, right? They were not getting enough support from a lot of parties. I mean, I'm not talking from the consultant. I'm generally talking in terms of the other stakeholders also, because the companies were closed and each country was going through different situations.
Mhm.
So the overall scenario had moved. But if you remember, if you recall, Sabha, during any of these lockdown,
Mhm.
the main people that were working were the banks.
Mhm.
They were never shut. They were always working.
Right.
Okay, my customers were there. They were working as a bank employees. They were going to the bank. They were working. Only thing is they didn't have the support from all the parties.
Mhm.
Okay, so in that scenario, what happened? They had actually postponed this project, which
Mhm.
would have affected them the rollouts. Or each bank should have their own marketing thing, saying, okay, this may also increase their customer base. A lot of things were involved. So when I was talking to one of my customer and talking to him about how this remote consulting works, he in fact brought to me a point saying, okay, I didn't know this. If this was there, I wouldn't have postponed my project. So then we sat down and we drafted a plan saying, okay, now probably you have postponed it. See if you can reconsider it and take it. So he took around 20-25 days. And what he did is he spoke to other stakeholders whether they can support remotely during this process.
Mhm.
So we actually did one of the certification recently, like 15 days back.
Mhm.
We actually completed their contactless certification for major payment plans. Okay, talking to this day, they have
Mhm.
already rolled out the terminal, which they had postponed it for almost 6 months. The
Mhm.
point is, this is basically bringing a lot of interesting, thought-provoking things to them also.
Mhm.
Instead of postponing things, there are a lot of things can be done remotely.
Right. That's pretty cool stuff that you guys have done. So, and are there any other providers in the market who offer this remote consulting? So I'm sure you must be having a lot of competition.
Certainly, I mean, as I mentioned during the call initially also,
Mhm.
remote support is not a new concept.
Okay. All right.
During the certification, most of the vendors, they provide remote support.
Okay. All right.
Remote support, how it works is basically during the certification, if you need any help, I will help you remotely.
Okay.
You send me an email about the issue, I will help you with that.
Mm.
You collect the logs and send it to me, I will validate the logs for you.
Okay.
Okay. As a remote consulting concept was not there.
Mhm.
Probably it may be there in different regions. Best of my knowledge, to whomever I spoke, to our acquirers, it was pretty new concept for them as a remote consulting part,
Okay.
where we handhold them from initiation of the project till the LOA
Mhm.
through every step. We are there with them. This kind of concept was missing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I would say that there might be some competitors who would be interested now,
Mhm.
But certainly, yeah, I would say, yeah, we had that, the initial thing when we spoke to customer, they actually felt, okay, this was not there.
Okay, all right. So how did you actually come up with this remote consulting concept? I mean, did this pandemic force you to get into this, or was this something that was already in the making?
To be very honest, it was not in the making.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because in general, all the acquirers, they would prefer on-site
Okay.
because it is reducing a lot of their headache.
Okay.
Where when a resource come from outside who's an experienced consultant, they don't need to worry about anything. They hand over the project to him and they'll be like, okay, I will focus on
Okay.
my work.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the concept we were also following.
All right.
Okay, whenever there is a remote support needed, we were providing. But considering during this period, when that was one of the things I meant, how as a company also we moved from working from office to working from home within
Mm-hmm.
a day or two.
Okay.
Where all our developers right now, if you see last 4-5 months, they are sitting at home,
Mm-hmm.
but we are still delivering all the projects to our customers without even one single impact. Because
Okay.
the way we moved everything to cloud, the way we organized the stuff, it actually started giving like probably there is a way that we can help customers. So when we started speaking to customers about okay, how things are going, and when we heard like a lot of postponing happening on their projects and stuff, then came this okay, why not try this remote consult? Okay, there are a lot of challenges initially. So I'm very honest. There are a lot of challenges in terms of how
Mm-hmm.
do we manage the tools, how do we support them remotely, different time zones. One or two projects when we executed, we felt okay, this is the way forward. This can be done.
Okay. All right. So now with your remote consulting in place, does it really have to be sold? Or do your customers have an option of coming into your website and figuring out a space and then go and register themselves and then they can kickstart the project? Is that something like that, or does it still have to be
In,
sold to
in
them?
fact, in fact, we are working on making it much more convenient to customer. Basically, making it like available in the website. But that takes a lot of time and effort, considering a lot of situations and the dependencies now. Right now, that option is not there, but we are working towards it. Currently, what we are doing is we are individually approaching them. Also, one of the reasons why I'm telling individually approaching each customers is because a lot of the ambiguity is there that how this remote consulting works.
Mm-hmm.
So once we make sure they understand it for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
for the subsequent times, I don't need to go there and explain it to them. Like
Okay.
the option what you mentioned and what we are right now working, that
Mm-hmm.
will work. Basically, they can come and onboard themselves easily, and they take the remote consulting option that is there in the pipe. But currently, it is working through phones and emails,
Mm-hmm.
and we are talking to them and explaining them.
All right. So you mean to say that status quo is the biggest challenge when it comes to you pushing your remote consulting to your customers because they don't know how this entire thing works.
Certainly, that is there. That is the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of things do you do towards educating them?
I mean, basically the case, I mean, one of the use case what I explained,
Mm-hmm.
I narrate them. Okay, this is what we have done and this is possible.
Okay. All
See,
right.
and few of the challenges like I mentioned about the beat tools or beat how this work in different time zones. When I
Mm-hmm.
explain it to them, okay, this we have already done it and it is possible, they are now willing to explore that option. They are willing to consider that option instead of pushing their projects ahead.
Mm-hmm. So how has this work from home been for you personally, Goutham? I mean, for instance, if you ask me, I have learned sign language as a skill during this break. So are there any
Okay.
skills that which you have learned during this break, or is there any difference in the way in
The
which you look at
initial
life?
initial few months, at least I would say at least a month and a half, it was very challenging. See,
Okay.
in my 12 years career, this was the first time where I'm working from home.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And this is the first time, I mean, probably for longest period, I have not traveled anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So as an individual also, I'm not used to this kind of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But only thing is the adaptability or this is where we have to survive now. 2020 is all about surviving.
Right.
So that is basically allowing me to learn new things.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty much comfortable now. If you ask me my situation in March to July, I'm much more comfortable now.
Okay.
I've learned because this is what we got used to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, probably because of the company also, the way all of us came together, how to manage the situations, like how we get onto calls every day and weekly we have a company calls where all of us see ourselves for video calls. This is actually helping. In terms of learning, yeah, I have learned a lot of new things in terms of my cycling, how to do cycling at home. apart from my professional thing, being a cyclist, now I'm able to do cycling inside home, which was I really didn't know that I'll be able to pedal for like 2-3 hours sitting inside home.
Right.
That I'm able to do it now. So
and literally not physically moving per se. Right?
Exactly, and you don't need to worry about eating outside or contacting other people.
All right.
I think this will be a new normal for a few more months to come.
Right. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, is there anything that which you want to add to what we discussed, or did I miss out something that you may want to cover about your remote?
No, I think we have covered most of the things about the main thing is bringing out this into customers. Basically, I'm making this awareness. I mean, I'm not probably it's not the right word to use. It's not awareness. Basically, letting them know that be it any challenge in the consulting, we can address it remotely. It is possible, but we have to work closely than before.
Yeah, thank you so much, Goutham, for your time. And is there a way through which people can reach out to you? Maybe a LinkedIn handle or something like that?
Yeah, they can we'll probably send an email at sales@payhuddle.com. That will be easiest one, or they can reach out to any of our LinkedIn profiles, be it mine, yours, or any of our company's LinkedIn profile.
Okay, all right.
And they can reach out to us, or they can even call me on my mobile phone.
Sure, that's great, Goutham. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and all the best with your remote consulting services. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good talking to you. Take care.